The gravel crunched under Ethan's boots as he approached the cabin he hadn't seen in 3 years. The war had changed everything, scorched cities, broken treaties, and a peace so fragile it felt like holding glass. All he wanted was silence, solitude, and the familiar comfort of the place his grandfather had built with his own hands. But smoke was rising from the chimney. Ethan's jaw tightened as he climbed the porch steps, noting the small changes, herbs drying on strings, unfamiliar symbols carved into the doorframe, and a scent in the air that definitely wasn't pine. His hand found the door handle, and he pushed inside without knocking. The woman sitting by his fireplace looked up with startling violet eyes, her pale purple skin catching the firelight. Dark curls framed a face that was unmistakably alien, unmistakably Valari. She wore simple human clothes that were too big for her frame, and a bandage wrapped around her left shoulder showed dried blood seeping through. "You're in my house," Ethan said, his voice deadly calm. She stood slowly, favoring her injured side. "I am Sailra." Her accent was thick but her English clear. "You must be the one who built this sanctuary." "Sanctuary?" Ethan stepped closer, noting how she didn't back down despite being obviously wounded. "This is my cabin. My property. You're trespassing." "No." Sailra's chin lifted defiantly. "You left this place empty. I found shelter here when I was bleeding, alone. In my culture, when someone returns to a place where another has made refuge." She paused, searching for words. "You returned to it. You returned to me. This place binds us now." "That's ridiculous. I don't care about your customs." "The roof leaked. I fixed it. The garden was overgrown. I cleared it. The winter stores were empty. I gathered food." Her eyes never left his. "This place was dying when I found it. I brought it back to life." Ethan looked around, really seeing for the first time. The cabin was cleaner than he'd left it, small repairs completed, fresh herbs hanging to dry. Even the old quilt on his bed had been mended with careful stitches in purple thread. "I don't want you here," he said, but the words came out less forceful than intended. Sailra moved to the window, gazing out at the darkening forest. "The cold season comes soon. You would send a wounded female into the wilderness alone?" Something in her voice, not quite pleading, but achingly vulnerable, made Ethan hesitate. The war had ended, but barely. Valari refugees were scattered, often hunted by human extremist groups. "Why here?" he asked finally. "Why my cabin?" She turned back to him, and for a moment her defiant mask slipped, revealing exhaustion and deep loneliness. "Because it felt safe. Like a place where someone once knew peace." Outside, the first winter wind began to howl. 3 days of cold rain convinced Ethan that throwing Sailra out would be tantamount to murder. He told himself it was basic human decency, not the way her eyes lit up when she tasted the coffee he'd reluctantly shared. "The shingles on the north side are loose," she said over breakfast, spooning honey into her cup with the reverence of someone who'd gone without luxuries. "Storm will tear them off if we don't fix them soon." "We?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You cannot reach the high places with your shoulder." She gestured to where shrapnel had left him with limited mobility in his left arm. "I am, how do you say, more bendy." "Flexible," he corrected automatically, then caught himself helping her with English. "When had that started?" Working on the roof together felt surprisingly natural. Sailra moved with feline grace despite her injury, passing him tools and holding shingles steady while he hammered. Her purple skin had a subtle luminescence in daylight that he found himself stealing glances at. "Why did you learn our language?" he asked during a break. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. "I was, cultural liaison. Before the war. I studied human customs, tried to build bridges." Her laugh was bitter. "Much good it did. You tried to stop it." "I tried to make my people understand yours. But fear." She shook her head. Fear makes monsters of us all. That evening, she cooked something that smelled like cinnamon and starlight. Ethan had planned to eat his usual canned soup, but the aroma drew him to the kitchen where she stirred a pot with practiced ease. "Valari comfort food," she explained, offering him a taste. "My grandmother's recipe." The flavors exploded across his tongue, familiar spices combined in ways that were utterly alien yet somehow perfect. "It's incredible. Food is memory," she said softly. "When you share it, you share part of yourself." They ate in companionable silence, the firelight dancing across her features. When she reached across him for the salt, her arm brushed his, and he felt something electric pass between them. She felt it too, he could tell by the way her breathing changed, the slight flush that darkened her purple skin. "Ethan," she said his name like a prayer. "In my culture, when two people share sustenance and shelter through the dark season. What does it mean?" His voice was rougher than intended. "It means we are no longer strangers." Her violet eyes met his. "It means we choose to survive together." Outside, the wind howled louder, but inside the cabin felt warmer than it had in years. Weeks passed in a rhythm Ethan hadn't expected to enjoy. Mornings brought shared coffee and comfortable silence. Days were filled with winterizing tasks, splitting wood, preserving food, reinforcing windows. Evenings found them by the fire, Sailra teaching him basic Valari phrases while he helped her with English idioms. "Your people have strange sayings," she mused, attempting to darn his socks with delicate purple fingers. "Break a leg means good luck." "This makes no sense." "About as much sense as your phrase for being happy," Ethan countered, whittling a new handle for the axe. "What was it again?" "Velendra Sethin." She smiled, the expression transforming her entire face. "Literally, my soul dances in sunlight." "That's..." He paused, studying the way firelight caught the subtle patterns in her skin he was only beginning to notice. "Beautiful, actually." The compliment made her duck her head shyly, curls falling forward to hide her face. Something warm unfurled in Ethan's chest at the sight. Their growing ease shattered one evening when she cried out in her sleep. Ethan found her thrashing in the small bed he'd given her, speaking rapid Valari through tears. When he gently shook her awake, she clutched his shirt with desperate fingers. "I'm sorry," she gasped. "The dreams, they come sometimes." "What dreams?" He sat on the edge of her bed, not caring about propriety. "My unit. We were trying to evacuate civilians when your bombers came." Her voice broke. "I was the only one who made it out. 23 souls, and I couldn't save them." Ethan's throat tightened. "Sailra. You lost people too. I can see it in how you hold yourself, how you flinch at sudden sounds." She touched his face with trembling fingers. "We are both ghosts, aren't we?" "Maybe." He caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. "But ghosts can learn to live again." Something shifted between them in that moment. When he should have returned to his room, he stayed, holding her until her breathing evened out. When she should have let go, she kept her fingers tangled in his shirt. "Ethan." Her voice was barely a whisper. "What?" "Thank you for not sending me away." He pressed his lips to her forehead in a kiss that was meant to be comforting but lingered longer than it should have. Her skin was warm silk under his mouth, and when she sighed softly against him, every rational thought scattered. "Sailra," he breathed her name like a confession. She tilted her face up to his, violet eyes dark with something that made his pulse race. "In my culture," she whispered, "healing begins with touch." Their first kiss was hesitant, questioning. The second was an answer. The blizzard hit 3 days before the winter solstice, burying the cabin in snow so deep the windows looked like white walls. Ethan had never been so grateful for Sailra's insistence on over-preparing their supplies. "How long will it last?" she asked, watching him bank the fire for maximum efficiency. "Could be days. Maybe a week." He glanced at their dwindling wood pile. We'll need to stay close to conserve heat. She nodded seriously, though he caught the slight flush in her cheeks. Since their first kiss, they'd been dancing around each other, lingering touches while passing food, meaningful glances across the cabin, the electric tension when they worked side by side. By the second day, with howling wind rattling the walls and temperatures plummeting, Ethan made the practical decision. We should share body heat, he said, trying to sound clinical. One bed, more blankets. Is this human survival strategy? Sailra asked, but her eyes held knowing warmth. Basic thermodynamics, he replied, then added more honestly, and an excuse to hold you. That night, curled together under every blanket in the cabin, the dam finally broke. What started as innocent cuddling became exploring touches, whispered names, and the discovery that Valari's skin grew luminescent when aroused, a soft purple glow that made Ethan's breath catch. You're beautiful, he murmured against her throat, tracing the delicate patterns that spiraled across her collarbone. Ethan, she gasped as his lips found a particularly sensitive spot. In my culture, when two souls weather a storm together. What does it mean? He pulled back to meet her eyes. It means we choose each other. Not just for survival, but for life. Her hands framed his face. It means bonding, deeper than your marriage, more sacred than vows. And if I choose that? His heart hammered against his ribs. If I choose you? Then you would be mine, and I would be yours, until the stars grow cold. He kissed her answer against her lips, pouring 3 years of loneliness and pain into the connection. She responded with equal hunger, her luminescent skin painting them both in soft purple light. When they came together, it was with the desperate intensity of two people who had found something worth living for. Outside, the storm raged with primordial fury, but inside their cocoon of warmth and light, Ethan discovered that home wasn't a place, it was this woman in his arms, her alien beauty and fierce heart, the way she whispered his name like a prayer in the darkness. Velandra Sethin, she breathed against his shoulder as they lay entwined afterward. What does that mean again? He asked, though he suspected he knew. She smiled, tracing circles on his chest. My soul dances in sunlight. Her eyes met his. You are my sunlight, Ethan. Even in the storm. Spring arrived with a rush of melting snow and returning birds, but also with news that changed everything. A trader brought word that Valari refugee settlements had formed in the northern territories, safe havens where Sailra's people were rebuilding their lives. You could have a real community again, Ethan said carefully, watching her tend the garden they'd planned together. Other Valari, familiar customs. Sailra's hand stilled on the seedlings. Is that what you want? For me to leave? I want what makes you happy. The words cost him everything to say. Even if that's not here. Not with me. She stood, brushing soil from her hands, and turned to face him with that direct gaze that had captivated him from the beginning. Do you know what I dreamed last night? He shook his head, throat tight. I dreamed of our children playing in this garden while you taught them to whittle and I taught them Valari lullabies. I dreamed of growing old in this place, of watching the seasons change from that window. She gestured to the cabin that bore traces of both their influences now, human practicality merged with Valari aesthetics. Tell me, Ethan, do humans dream of futures they don't want? Sailra. He reached for her, hardly daring to hope. I found sanctuary here, yes. But I found something more. She stepped into his arms, her skin beginning its telltale glow. I found you. I found us. The settlements offer community, but they cannot offer what this place has given me. What's that? Home. Not just shelter, not just survival, but true home. She cupped his face in her hands. You asked me once why I chose this cabin. The truth is, I didn't choose it, I chose you. My soul recognized yours before my mind understood. Ethan kissed her with the fervor of a man reprieved from execution. When they broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. So we stay. We stay. She smiled, that radiant expression that transformed her entire face. But not as refugee and reluctant host. As partners. As bonded souls. As family, he added, surprised by how right the word felt. They worked together that day, planting seeds for a garden that would feed them through the next winter and many more to come. As evening fell, they sat on the porch swing Ethan had built as a surprise, their own addition to his grandfather's legacy. No regrets? Sayora asked, curled against his side. Ethan looked out at the forest where he'd once sought solitude and found something infinitely better. Only that it took a war to bring you to me. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, the universe has a sense of poetry. From destruction, creation. From loneliness, love. From my cabin to our home. From strangers to. She paused, searching for the right words in either language. To everything, Ethan finished, and knew he'd found the truest phrase in any tongue. Above them, the first stars appeared, bearing witness to a love that had bridged two worlds and made them.